In our headlines on this Tuesday, May 20th, here in South Korea. Polling stations overseas are opening doors on this Tuesday for registered Korean voters there to cast their ballots for the 21st presidential election, while candidates continue to rally support from voters here at home. Meanwhile, a South Korean trade delegation departs for the U.S. today to engage in more technical talks on tariffs, following a meeting between Trade Minister An Deok-keun and U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer here in Korea last week. And U.S. President Donald Trump speaks on the phone with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin for over 2 hours regarding potential peace in Ukraine. And while they both claim the talks went well, few details have been shared. Hello and welcome to the Daily Report. I'm Min San-hee. Overseas Korean voters have begun casting their ballots, with polling stations in New Zealand among the first to open on this Tuesday for South Korea's presidential election. Our correspondent Oh Soo-young reports.
Overseas voting for South Korea's 21st presidential election is now underway, beginning Tuesday for 118 countries around the world. The first of the ballots were cast in New Zealand and Fiji, with polls expected to close last in Hawaii. According to the National Election Commission, overseas ballots for registered voters will be held over 6 days until Sunday local time at 182 Korean embassies, consulates, diplomatic missions and offices. Voting hours are from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. 39 additional polling stations have been installed where the number of overseas nationals exceeds 30,000. In the United States, these include the states of New York, California, Massachusetts and Texas, opening from Thursday to Saturday. Voting booths were also added for the Korean military's Dongmyeong unit in Lebanon and the Hanbit unit in Uganda. Specific times and locations can be found on consulate websites. When heading out to the ballot booth, voters must bring proof of identification which has a photo on it. Those who have immigrated or acquired permanent residency must also present proof that they remain solely Korean nationals. These include official documents for visas and permanent residency cards. As requirements differ according to the country of residence, voters must check their respective embassy or consulate website. Also, registered overseas voters who are visiting Korea or are unable to vote in their country of residence can join domestic voters on June 3rd at designated polling stations. But first, they must register in person between next Monday and June 3rd at an election office located in the district of their last registered Korean address. Over 258,000 are expected to cast overseas votes, 14% more than the last presidential election. This time, overseas polling stations were established for the first time in 4 countries where diplomatic missions were recently opened: Cuba, Luxembourg, Lithuania and Estonia. Overseas ballots are returned to Korea via diplomatic pouches to be counted together with domestic votes after Election Day voting ends. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
Acting President Lee Joo-ho has called for commitment to conducting a fair and transparent election as overseas voting begins today. The remarks were made during a cabinet meeting earlier on this Tuesday as he called on the National Election Commission to ensure the safe management and transportation of ballot boxes from overseas once voting by registered Korean voters there ends this coming Sunday. Also, with the official voting day here now precisely 2 weeks away, the acting leader also urged relevant ministries to actively support the efforts of the Election Commission. And now turning to the latest on the campaign trail, Liberal Party contender Lee Jae-myung addressed his supporters in the city of Paju today. I have our political correspondent Shin Ha-young standing by live with details. Ha-young, it's good to have you on. Do fill us in then.
Sure, Sunny. I'm currently out here in front of a community station at Paju in Gyeonggi province, which borders North Korea. And Democratic Party presidential candidate Lee Jae-myung is now delivering his speech seeking voter support. And during his speech, he addressed people's livelihoods and also mentioned about the distribution of local vouchers. And before coming to Paju, he held a rally in Uijeongbu where he spoke about peace and security. Take a listen.
Hasn't this northern region made big sacrifices for the country's security over many years? Those sacrifices should be properly compensated, so people from now on don't feel it's unfair.
At his final stop of the day in Gimpo, he is expected to reveal a plan to cut travel time between Gimpo and Seoul's Gangnam area to around 30 minutes.
Right, and Hayoung, as we mentioned earlier, overseas voting began today, and I understand Lee Jae-myung touched upon this particular reality. Could you tell us more?
Sure, Sunny. Marking the first day of overseas voting, Lee Jae-myung held a one-hour virtual meeting with overseas Koreans ahead of today's rally. And during the discussion, overseas voters from various countries shared the common difficulties they face, especially regarding the inconvenience of voting. Take a listen.
Botswana has no Korean embassy or consulate general, so Koreans here have to go to South Africa to vote.
After the event, I had a chance to ask Lee about ways to ensure voting rights for overseas Koreans, including thoughts on mail-in voting. And he said that appropriate measures should be put in place to ease voting for those living abroad and suggested several ways to do so. Take a listen.
Overseas Koreans currently have to register and vote separately, but with a better system, both could be done at once. While some worry about mail-in voting security, countries like the US use it, and Korea already allows similar voting for people with mobility issues or those in hospital. I wonder if it's fair to not allow overseas Koreans to vote by mail.
He also suggested setting up temporary polling stations with temporary staff, saying that given the high personal costs voters currently face, the government should provide such kind of support. That's all for this hour. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Hayoung, thank you for that coverage of the Liberal camp. Up next, we turn to the Conservative camp, whose contender Kim Moon-soo is also campaigning in the Greater Seoul region. For details, I have our Kim Do-yeon joining me live. Do-yeon, welcome back. So where exactly are you joining us from then?
That's right, Sunny. I'm currently in Hanam City at a shopping mall where Kim is about to appear on the stage in about 30 minutes right behind me. Now, he has been rallying throughout the day and he's been focusing his message that he's more ethical than his DP rival Lee Jae-myung, and that the DP is using its supermajority to pass legislation to protect Lee from his legal risk. Take a listen.
I'll be an ethical president. I will never wear a bulletproof vest. I would get rid of the bulletproof glass and never try to pass bulletproof legislation.
Of course, here he's trying to tie Lee's recent upgraded security measures to the DP's legislative efforts. He also reiterated that it was he who created Gyeonggi-do province's economic zones, such as Pyeongtaek's Samsung Electronics plant, the largest one in the world, comparing his success as the province's governor to that of Lee's. Earlier in the day, he toured around Seoul meeting with members of the public in the streets. Now, he also shared his pledges on fostering culture and cultural activities as he visited a culture and arts organization. His major pledge was to make community culture centers across the nation accessible to anyone within 10 minutes to enhance culture and art activities.
Also, Do-yeon, I hear Kim sought to reach out to his conservative rival Lee Jun-seok of the Reform Party yet again.
That's right, Sonny. Earlier in the day, as he faced the media, he repeated his message that he and his policies align closely and that it was PPP's fault for making Reform Party's leave the PPP. Take a listen.
He used to lead our party. As you've seen at the debate, there's absolutely no difference between us. Also, it was our party's problem that caused Lee Jun-seok to leave. So I think it's right to be together.
Of course, Lee Jun-seok rejected that offer again, but a movement to form an anti-Lee Jae-myung bloc started moving for the PPP. As the interim leader Kim Yong-tae met with the new Future Democratic Party's chairman for talks on future cooperation. This is a new party made up of former DP members who are not in Lee Jae-myung's faction. The leader of this party said the PPP's constitutional reform proposal of shortening the next president's term to 3 years with the next one starting a new 4-year term with re-election aligns with theirs. In the meantime, the PPP's Kim Yong-tae also proposed a debate for the First Lady prospects, but the DP and Reform Party candidates immediately criticized the idea to turn it down. That's all for now. Back to you, Sunny.
All right, Toyon, as always, thank you for the coverage of the Conservative camp. Staying on the campaign trail, Reform Party candidate Jun-seok remained active in the southwestern city of Gwangju for a second day on this Tuesday. Addressing the audience there, he spoke of pursuing the spirit of former President Nomuyon, who sought unity between traditionally conservative and liberal regions in the southwest and eastern parts of the country. He was also at Cheonnam National University to touch base with the student body there as part of his campus cafeteria outreach. Earlier, he sat down with the Gwangju Mayor Kang Ki-jong and pledged support for AI and future mobility industries. A South Korean trade delegation has departed for the U.S. to engage in more technical talks on tariffs. Our correspondent Moon Hae-ryun covers the agenda ahead.
A South Korean delegation will begin working-level talks with a U.S. trade representative in Washington on Tuesday local time as part of broader efforts to finalize what's being dubbed the July package. With both sides aiming for a comprehensive trade deal by July 8th, Seoul is expected to focus on minimizing the steep tariffs on its key exports. However, time is tight, with the U.S. negotiating with its other trade partners and South Korea's presidential election just around the corner. 6 key topics are on the agenda for this round of technical discussions: balanced trade, non-tariff measures, economic security, digital trade, country of origin, and commercial considerations. South Korea plans to use its cooperation in areas like shipbuilding as leverage, with the ultimate goal of lowering the 25% reciprocal tariff rates and the sector-specific tariffs on cars, steel, aluminium, and semiconductors. Meanwhile, the U.S. is expected to push back with its own demands, with concerns over its trade deficit and various non-tariff barrier issues. The Trump administration has pointed to a wide range of non-tariff barriers in Korea, such as restrictions on importing beef from cattle older than 30 months, as hindering American exports to the country. Seoul has since responded by saying there were few barriers hindering trade with the United States, and experts say that some concessions could be made for low-impact sectors in order to gain leverage in more critical areas.
We should be ready to ease non-tariff barriers on items like agricultural and livestock products, especially those with low import volumes. In return, we must push hard to secure U.S. tariff cuts on high-value exports, like automobiles and semiconductors.
This comes after high-level ministerial meetings during the APEC Trade Summit in Jeju last week, where South Korea's Trade Minister An Duk-gun followed up his meeting with the U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer with a press conference. He revealed that a ministerial-level interim review is scheduled for mid-June to finalize the results of the negotiations, meaning that important decisions related to the trade agreement will be made by the next administration. Moon Hae-ryun, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, Korea's auto exports to the U.S. market tumbled some 20% in April on year. Findings by the Trade Ministry released on this Tuesday show auto shipments to the U.S. amounted to almost $2.9 billion last month, down 19.6% on year. This latest performance is being linked to U.S. tariffs and the launch of a new Hyundai Motor Group plant in the state of Georgia. Meanwhile, overall auto exports in April was also down nearly 4% on year at $6.5 billion. But here at home, car sales rose 6.7% last month on year, driven by demand for electric and hybrid vehicles. U.S. President Donald Trump spoke on the phone with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin about potential peace in Ukraine. And while they both say the talks went well, few details have been shared. Our foreign affairs correspondent Peunji reports.
Following the much-anticipated call between leaders from Washington and Moscow, U.S. President Donald Trump said he made progress during his conversation on Monday with his Russian counterpart Vladimir Putin. He proclaimed on his social media that the call went very well and that Russia and Ukraine had agreed to immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire, without providing details on when that will happen.
We just spent 2.5 hours talking to Vladimir Putin. and I think some progress has been made.
Putin, who described the call as meaningful and frank, said Russia is ready to work with Ukraine on a memorandum on a possible future peace agreement. But he did not address demands from the U.S. and European countries for an unconditional 30-day ceasefire, meaning no major breakthrough in ending the war.
At the same time, I would like to note that in general, Russia's position is clear. The main thing for us is to eliminate the root causes of this crisis.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said he also spoke with Trump before the American leader's call with Putin. He called for an unconditional ceasefire, while urging stronger U.S. sanctions if Russia is not ready to end the war.
I asked him, before his conversation with Putin, not to make decisions about Ukraine without us. We agreed that we would get in touch after his conversation with Putin.
Zelensky also urged Washington not to distance itself from peace talks, saying he is considering a high-level meeting between Ukraine, Russia, the U.S., and European countries. This comes after Trump said the conditions of a peace deal could only be negotiated between Russia and Ukraine, possibly with the help of the Pope, leading to speculation that this signals a possible shift in his stance, that he was leaving the two countries to find a deal without the U.S. as a broker. 배은지, Arirang News.
Over in the Middle East, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has vowed to seize control of the entire Gaza Strip. Our Jun-seok covers his intentions and more.
The Israeli military, which recently launched Operation Gideon's Chariots, aimed at recapturing the Gaza Strip, announced it had struck some 160 targets, including Hamas infrastructure. However, according to Al Jazeera, airstrikes also targeted several hospitals across the enclave. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu released a video statement on the same day, vowing to make progress amid fierce fighting, adding that Israel will take control of the entire Gaza Strip. The remark was slammed by Britain, France, and Canada, who were critical of Israel's expansion of its war, as they vowed a concrete response if Israel's campaign continues. Also following pressure from around the globe over the blocking of any humanitarian aid into the region, Israel has begun allowing some trucks carrying necessities.
Today, Israel is facilitating the entry of trucks with baby food into Gaza. In the coming days, Israel will facilitate the entry of dozens of aid trucks.
The Director General of Israel's Foreign Ministry, Eden Bartal, said Israel always complies with international law and with its obligations and statements. However, he was critical of the recent condemnation, saying the international community must decide whether to side with Israel or Hamas. He added that the aid that began coming in will only cover a few days. The Foreign Ministry official also stressed that the humanitarian aid is to help the population, not to support Hamas. 이승재, Arirang News.
The South Korean military believes North Korea's air-to-air missile technology may have been advanced with Russian assistance. Now, this belief is in line with earlier remarks by analysts here, who suggested Pyongyang may have received radar or software technology from Moscow in return for troop deployment. Last week, the regime conducted its first live fire test of an air-to-air missile that reportedly successfully intercepted targets. With regard to this latter claim, military authorities here have countered its credibility, adding that actual deployment could take considerable time. Relevant authorities in the meantime are seeking to assess the extent of Russian involvement in the missile's development.
This is The World Now, bringing you the latest stories from around the globe. 5 years after the United Kingdom departed from the European Union, a new agreement has been reached between the two parties. The deal announced on Monday includes defense cooperation and youth mobility. At a summit in London on May 19th, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen unveiled a comprehensive agreement to improve post-Brexit relations. It includes a new defense and security partnership, granting the UK access to a $200 billion EU defense fund and facilitating joint military procurement and support for Ukraine's defense. The agreement also extends mutual fishing access for 12 years, allowing EU vessels to continue operating in UK waters. A youth mobility scheme will facilitate temporary work and study exchanges between the UK and EU member states. British travellers will also benefit from faster airport procedures through EU e-gates. Prime Minister Starmer lauded the agreement as a win-win, while EU Commissioner Ursula von der Leyen described the progress as historic. The U.S. Supreme Court has allowed the Trump administration to terminate the temporary protected status for approximately 350,000 Venezuelan nationals living in the country. In an unsigned order on Monday, the Supreme Court lifted a lower court's injunction that blocked the Department of Homeland Security's attempt to end TPS for Venezuelans. This decision allows the administration to revoke protection extended until October 2026 during the Biden administration. TPS provides temporary legal status and work authorization to individuals from countries experiencing severe crises. The Biden administration granted Venezuelans an extension of the status in response to ongoing political and economic instability in Venezuela. TPS has also been removed for nationals from Afghanistan and Cameroon as part of the Trump administration's efforts to tighten immigration policies. Former U.S. President Joe Biden expressed gratitude for the support he has received from around the world after announcing on Sunday that he has been diagnosed with an aggressive form of prostate cancer that has metastasized to the bones. Biden wrote on his social media on Monday, "Cancer touches us all, and that he and his wife Jill have learned that you are strongest in the broken places." Reacting to the announcement, President Donald Trump said Biden's diagnosis was very sad, but added that he was surprised it wasn't detected earlier. At the same time, he and First Lady Melania wished Biden a fast and successful recovery. While not curable, experts note that effective management can allow patients to live for several years. Finally, in Denmark, the 14th Hundested Sand Sculpture Festival kicks off on Friday. The annual event will feature sand sculptures crafted by 16 international artists centered around this year's theme of Showtime. Visitors can expect to see detailed representations of entertainment icons such as Charlie Chaplin and Miss Piggy, as well as circus clowns. The festival also offers diverse family-friendly activities, including sculpting workshops, sand painting, and treasure hunts. As the festival runs through October 19th, the sculptures are made of sand mixed with clay to ensure they last until autumn. The sand is reused each year. Choi Ji-hee, Arirang News.
The early summer-like heat appeared today across the country. The highest daytime temperature in Seoul was 26 degrees Celsius, but with the high humidity, it felt even hotter at 28 degrees. The southern parts of the country, red on the map, were as hot as 30 degrees today. It will be a bit hotter tomorrow nationwide. Rain is forecast for many parts of the east tomorrow. Estimated rainfall will be up to 40 millimeters in eastern parts of Gyeonggi-do province and Gangwon-do province, and up to 60 millimeters in the mountainous areas of Jeju Island. Tomorrow morning will start warm at around 20 degrees all over the country. Highs will move up to 28 degrees in Seoul, Daegu, and Gyeongju. UV rays will also be very strong during the day. Please be prepared in advance for when you go outside. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. A panel session is coming up next, so do stay with us. Thank you as always for watching.